Back in 1995, Roy Rogers wrote a letter that would end up closing his own museum. No one actually knew what was inside it until 2009. That letter had very tough rules about money and the family's bills. When his son Dusty finally read it, he started to cry. The museum was bringing in millions of dollars, but things were going wrong. Roy had seen this coming 14 years before it happened. He knew his fame would eventually become a heavy load for his family. The letter forced his family to make a choice that felt impossible. Fans begged them not to do it. But Roy's last words were very clear. What he wrote will really surprise you. From Ohio to California, Roy Rogers' story started in a quiet part of Ohio where the dirt was dry and the workdays were long. He was born with the name Leonard Sly in 1911, and his family lived on a small, simple farm. They never had much money. The Great Depression made life even harder, so his dad had to work at a shoe factory far away and only came home on weekends. By the time Roy was 13, school felt like something they just couldn't afford anymore. So he went to work at that same factory to earn money just to help his family survive. Life was really hard on them. By 1930, he decided that staying there didn't make sense anymore. With only $7 in his pocket, he hitched rides all the way to California. He often had to sleep in his car at night. During the day, he did any job he could find, like picking peaches for a big fruit company. It was a very tough time to live. Thousands of workers were flooding into California just looking for a way to stay alive. He was right there with them, just trying to keep his hopes up. Those early years really changed him. They made him tough, which later helped him become the famous face of the American cowboy. The King of the Cowboys. Soon, his luck started to change. In 1933, he started a band with Tim S. Pencer and Bob Nolan. They were called the Pioneer Trio at first, but as they got more members, they became the Sons of the Pioneers. They began playing on a radio station in Los Angeles where people loved their smooth singing and yodeling. By 1935, they got a big record deal. Songs like Tumbling Tumbleweeds and Cool Water became famous all over the country. People who had never even seen the West started to imagine it because of their music. The group sold more than 10 million records in the 30s and 40s and appeared on big radio shows, bringing cowboy music into everyone's homes. During this time, Roy used the name Dick Weston and was the main singer and guitar player. The success of the band led him straight to Hollywood. In 1937, he took a big risk that changed his life forever. He snuck into a movie studio for a screen test. Some of the bosses thought he looked too country or too simple for movies, but the producers saw something special in him. That spark got him a contract for $75 a week, which is worth about $1,000 to $40 today. Only a year later, he starred in his first big movie and became famous so fast that by 1940, everyone called him the King of the Cowboys. Over 2.5 million people listened to him on the radio every week. People trusted him because he was a good guy hero. He didn't shoot to kill people. He just shot the guns out of the bad guys' hands, which made him a safe hero for families. By the middle of the 1940s, he was one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. Still, he stayed the same gentle cowboy that everyone loved, family and heartbreak. His happiest moment was in 1943 when he married Dale Evans. But their life together also had a lot of sadness. They had 9 children, though not all of them were their own biological kids. They had a big, happy home. Then something terrible happened in 1946. Their daughter Robin, who was born with Down syndrome and a heart problem, died just before her second birthday. Losing her broke their hearts. It almost made them want to quit show business forever. But after months of being very sad, they used their faith to find strength and change their work. They started making movies that were about hope and good values. Fans could tell they were being sincere. The couple became symbols of being strong and having a good family, and they kept adopting more kids who even appeared in movies with them. By 1950, Roy Rogers was everywhere. The Roy Rogers Show started in 1951, and 30 million people watched it every week. It was one of the most popular shows ever. A huge star of the show was Trigger, Roy's beautiful golden horse. Trigger could do more than 100 tricks. He could stand up on his back legs for almost 30 seconds. Kids loved those parts. Families watched together because the show taught good lessons, along with the action. Trigger helped teach those lessons, and people thought of him as almost human. The show ran for years and turned Roy into a legend that people of all ages knew about, the story of Trigger. Trigger's story got a bit weird after he died. He was born on the 4th of July in 1934, and Roy bought him for $20,500 in 1938. By 1945, Trigger had 10,000 people in his fan club and got more letters from fans than Roy did. On July 3, 1965, right before his 31st birthday, Trigger died of a heart attack at Roy's ranch. Roy was so upset that he didn't tell his family for nearly a year because he couldn't face telling Dale. Instead, he secretly hired DAA Pro to preserve Trigger's body. The Pro stretched Trigger's skin over a fake body and added glass eyes. The whole thing took 6 months and cost $3,000, which is like $30,000 today. The finished horse weighed 1,060 pounds. Trigger stayed at the ranch first and then moved to the Roy Rogers Museum, where fans took photos right next to him, never knowing he was preserved with chemicals. The museum kept him there until it closed in 2010. Later, Trigger was sold for $266. Bullet the dog had the same strange ending. Bullet died in 1958, and Roy couldn't bring himself to bury him either. He paid $1,500 to have the dog preserved so he looked like he was standing still. Bullet became a favorite for the 50,000 people who visited every year. After the museum closed, Bullet was sold for $35,000 and was put next to Trigger in a new collection. Both stayed there silently as years went by. Inside the museum itself had stories that felt both happy and a bit uneasy. It opened in 1967 on Roy's ranch. Roy built it because he had visited another museum and wished it had more personal stuff, so he collected everything from his life. It only cost $1 to get in. In the first year, over 100,000 people came just because they heard it was cool. It became a famous spot for families traveling on the highway. Roy was often there himself. Sometimes he gave the tours, and sometimes he played guitar for people. The museum had costumes, saddles, and personal items that made fans feel like they were in his world. One of the saddest things to see was Dale Evans's Bible. Inside, she had notes from their daughter Robin's funeral. The Bible was open to a famous part called Psalm 23. During tours, Roy would often read it out loud in a soft voice. People would cry as he talked about how those words helped them get through their sadness. That Bible showed a side of them that wasn't on TV, a side that knew a lot of pain and faith. Another amazing item was a silver saddle Dale had made by hand. It had 1,000 silver nails and an image of Trigger on it. Back then it was worth $10,000, which would be over $100,000 now. Roy used it in a movie. in 1952. Hidden inside was a small fake gun used for filming. Dale made it as a gift for Roy, and it showed how much their work and their marriage were tied together. The golden years and more sadness. By 1980, the museum was a very happy place. About 250,000 people visited every year. Families brought their cameras, and kids hoped to see Roy do a rope trick. Sometimes he even brought people on stage to show what he did when he performed for soldiers in World War II. People came from all over just to see Trigger standing in the light. At its best, the museum was a place where fans could feel like they were back in the old cowboy days. Everyone was excited to be there, and parents planned their whole vacations around it. But things felt a bit sadder when people saw the exhibit for Sandy Rogers. Roy and Dale adopted him in the 1950s after finding him sick and alone in a hospital when he was only 4. They gave him a great life. Then, in 1968, when Sandy was only 18, he died in a bad bus crash. 11 other people died that night, too. In the museum, Sandy's military jacket and dog tags were behind glass. Roy had given him that jacket after visiting soldiers in Vietnam. People usually spent a long time looking at that exhibit. Some whispered or cried. It felt very quiet there. The family kept Sandy's memory alive, and visitors could feel the sadness of a life that ended too soon. As time went on, the museum kept growing. But then they decided to move everything to Branson, Missouri in 2003. After the 9/11 attacks, fewer people were traveling to the old location. They had to pack up over 12,000 square feet of stuff. Trigger was moved in a special cold trailer to keep him safe. They loaded the trucks at night to keep everything private. The move cost $2 million. Branson seemed like a fresh start, but the people in the old town felt left behind. This move was the start of a rocky new chapter. Troubles in Branson. The big opening in Branson was hopeful. Roy's son Dusty sang for 5,000 fans. For a bit, it felt like the magic was back. But the building had a big problem. It wasn't built to handle earthquakes. When a small earthquake hit Missouri in 2005, the shaking cracked Trigger's glass box. People were shocked. A museum full of history had forgotten to protect itself from a simple shake. They had to do emergency repairs, and experts started arguing about how the family was taking care of things. Fans were worried about what else might get broken. Still, some things were still popular, like Nellie Bell, the Jeep from the TV show. People loved that Jeep. It had been in so many scenes and even had fake bullet holes. It was fixed up for $15,000. Kids knew exactly what it was. Parents remembered it from when they were little. It was like a little piece of family history on wheels. The beginning of the end. Then, everything changed. Roy Rogers died in 1998 at the age of 86. Even before moving to Branson, the museum started to slow down. It used to have 200,000 visitors, but after he died, it dropped to 120,000. Dusty said fans were so sad that they didn't want to visit anymore. They said it felt weird to walk through the museum when Roy wasn't there to say hello. This loss hurt the local businesses too. The whole town felt it. Then, the family got a huge shock. The government said they owed over $1.2 million in taxes because they didn't agree on how much the property was worth. To pay the lawyers, the family had to sell some of Roy's old baseballs for $5,000 each. But it wasn't enough. They had to fire staff and stop the new exhibits. Dusty admitted the museum was fighting to stay open. Dusty tried to make the museum more modern. He spent $50,000 on video screens that showed Roy's old movies. But the machines were old-fashioned, and broke almost every week. They would freeze up, leaving people confused. Older fans liked the old displays better anyway, and younger fans wanted better technology. Now the museum was spending money on things that weren't helping. Then, in 1999, they added an exhibit for Dale Evans. Her famous song played while people read her private letters. One letter was about a baby she lost in 1947. People usually thought of her as always happy, but this showed she had a hard life, too. Some fans liked seeing the real her, but others found it too sad. It was a very emotional part of the museum. High costs and final decisions. As time passed, it cost more and more just to take care of the stuffed animals. Keeping the air conditioning perfect for Trigger and Bullet cost $4,000 a month. After someone tried to steal hair from Trigger's tail in 2004, which is worth a lot of money, the insurance price tripled. New security systems cost money they didn't have. Trigger was now a source of pride, but also a huge bill. Saving him meant they couldn't afford other things. Then, the 2008 money crisis hit Branson really hard. Tourism dropped by 35%. Gas became very expensive. Families who used to visit stayed home instead. The museum's visitors dropped by half. Donations stopped coming in. Branson didn't feel safe anymore. Even cleaning the stuffed animals cost $25,000 a year. Trigger needed special oil for his fur so it wouldn't crack. If they missed one cleaning, it would cost $2,000 to fix the damage. It was becoming impossible to keep up. Dusty tried one last big idea in 2008. He spent $100,000 on virtual reality games to get kids interested. Only 10% of visitors actually used them. Some people got sick or had headaches from the headsets. The money they made from tickets didn't even cover the bills. The upgrades didn't save the museum. They had to fire more staff, leaving only 8 workers. Without enough people watching, visitors started touching things they shouldn't. One person accidentally ruined a part of a display that cost $2,000 to fix. The museum was failing. The money they used to get from the Roy Rogers restaurant chain also dropped by half. Bills were piling up. Dusty even used $150,000 of his own money to keep the lights on. It helped for a little while, but the museum was sinking. Following Roy's letter, Roy Rogers had written that letter in 1995 because he didn't want any confusion when he was gone. He told Dusty that if the bills ever got 20% higher than the money they were making, they had to sell everything. The museum, the treasures, all of it. He wanted it sold so his grandkids wouldn't have to pay his debts. It seemed mean at first, but if you read it closely, you could tell he was just a scared dad who didn't want to burden his family. He cared more about them than his fame. As the years went by, that rule became very important. By 2009, they were losing so much money they couldn't hide it anymore. That letter became their guide. It was like Roy's voice telling them what really mattered. It wasn't the boots or the saddles, it was the family. When Dale Evans died in 2001, things got even harder. Dusty had to make big decisions all by himself. When the family met in 2009 to talk about the future, it was very quiet. Dusty cried when he talked about the baby they lost a long time ago. Closing the museum felt like saying goodbye all over again. Dale used to be the one who kept everyone together. Without her, the meeting was very painful. Every story about the museum made them feel grief. Dusty's tears showed it wasn't just about money. It was the end of a 60-year history. Later that year, the brothers and sisters met again. The money records showed a $200,000 loss. Dusty's wife said their kids' college money was disappearing because of the museum's debt. It was time to protect the next generation. They looked at every option, but they always ended up at the same spot. The museum was failing, and Dusty kept thinking about his dad's letter. Roy had already told them what to do. The final goodbye and auction. The Smithsonian Museum offered them $500,000 to stay open a bit longer. But Roy had a rule: no government help. The family followed that rule, even though 10,000 fans signed a paper asking them to stay open. They said no to the money because Roy said no first. It was a brave but sad choice. They protected his memory by letting go of the museum. Many fans didn't understand. In November 2009, they voted to close for good. The last day was December 12th. Dusty locked the doors at 5:00 p.m. and left a note that said, "Happy trails," just like Roy's famous saying. 200 people came on the last day, many of them crying. They touched Trigger one last time. The note on the door made it feel like Roy was right there with them. The era ended quietly as the lights went out. Then came the big auction in 2010 in New York. Everyone went quiet when it was time to sell Trigger. When the final price hit $266,500, everyone was shocked. People expected it to be much lower. Trigger had been preserved since 1965, looking just like he did in the movies. A man named Patrick Gotch bought him for a TV station. People from 47 countries watched the sale. Trigger was moved to Nashville to be shown in a new place. That sale was a huge deal in the world of collecting. But there were other surprises, too. Roy's jacket from the 1940s sold for $7,500 because soldiers had signed it. An old BB gun sold for much more than anyone thought. Experts said they didn't realize how much people loved these small items. One of the saddest parts was when Dale's dress sold for $15,000, but a baby blanket from the daughter they lost only sold for $200. It was a day full of excitement and sadness. Where everything is now, the auction lasted 2 days and made almost $3 million. Trigger was the star, but Roy's saddle sold for $386,500. Dale's saddle sold for over $100,000, and the Jeep Nellie Bell sold for $98,500. Fans all over the world watched as their childhood memories were sold to different people. The auction spread Roy's history all over the place. Bullet the dog sold for $35,000, and Buttermilk the horse sold for $25,000. It was a shock to see them all split up. Later, the TV station brought Trigger, Bullet, and Buttermilk back together so people could see them as a group again. But not everyone was happy. When the news about the auction first came out, fans were very angry. They thought Trigger deserved to be in a museum like the Smithsonian. 15,000 people signed a protest, and people even stood outside with signs to save Trigger. But the auction happened anyway. People started debating if famous history should be owned by private people at all. Dusty had to tell everyone that there was no other way to handle it after the museum closed. Even when Roy's first guitar sold for $8,750, people said the family was just trying to get rich. The money helped the family, but the mean comments hurt. It showed how much people care about the past. There was even more drama when people found out Trigger had real horsehair on his tail. Animal groups called it creepy. Fans felt weird about it too. The way the horse was preserved caused a lot of arguments. Even after Trigger was bought, people were still fighting. A fan even sued the new owners for making money off him. The case was settled, but people were still upset. Today, Trigger is in a studio in Nashville. About 10,000 people a year pay $20 to see him. There is a fake Trigger in the old town, but the real one is far away. Bullet is in a private collection in Ohio. Buttermilk is used at fairs in California, though experts worry the air might ruin her. These pieces of history are all over the place now. Dusty is 78 years old and still does shows. He makes about $50,000 a year telling stories about his family. In 2025, he said that closing the museum took away a $400,000 debt. He still tells the old stories, but he feels much better now that the bills are gone. The cost of keeping everything together was just too high. Even so, people still remember Roy Rogers. Modern cowboy shows are like his old movies. His guitars are in big collections. Even Taylor Swift mentioned him as an inspiration. The museum is gone, but the king of the cowboys is still a legend. Would you like me to find some of Roy Rogers' old songs so you can hear his famous yodeling?